we start with the Pledge of Allegiance? Oh, actually, I should call it to order, but we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance and I'll do the official call to order here. Hold on. Somebody do it besides me.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. All right, sorry about that. Now that we've done the Pledge of Allegiance, let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. The Operations Committee meeting of November 28th. And let's see, we need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Do we have any public comments, Robin?
No, ma'am, we do not.
Okay. So we'll start with the construction update. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes, and Kevin Kelly, Rob is on vacation this week, so Kevin Kelly will be giving that update. So Kevin, you can take it from there.
All righty, are we gonna pull up the slide?
Yep. You see it?
I do. Well, good afternoon, and hopefully all of you had a very enjoyable Thanksgiving weekend. I did, and I'm still suffering from intake. I know you guys all got the PowerPoint and stuff like that, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do the executive summary for the outlines. We're still showing 5 projects that are having some material issues and delays and stuff. Molly, if you look on page or slide 5 and 7, Battery Creek High School is got various delays on some of the materials and stuff. So we're tracking them under a cautionary just to make sure that we stay due diligence on making sure the materials are being tracked and whatever means we can move forward to try and regain some of that time when the materials show up. Robert Smalls, we're still having some delivery delays as far as the electrical switchgear goes. That's on slides 8 and 10. The maintenance building and the maintenance annex, those are actually delays due to budgetary issues, and we'll be revisiting them in the spring of 2023, which isn't that far away. The Battery Creek, Bluffton L High School, the switch, which is the ATS switch, is now showing that we're anticipating getting that in February of 23. That's on slide 32, by the way. There we go, Bluffton High. But anyways, once the switch comes in, then of course we'll be scheduling to shut down the power to put the ATS in. The St. Helena gym, that's pretty much was a request by one of the board members to see what could be done with the signage on the facility. So Ajax has been awarded contract to schedule for cleaning that sign to kind of more beautify the exterior of the building there. This is just a request, of course, so we can get that taken care of. And if we drop down to project closeouts, right now under the fiscal year 19 and 20, the 8% capital improvement projects, we're showing that we got about 8 projects that still remain, 3 in the 19 and 5 in the 2021. Under the referendum, which is slides 83 and 84. Probably moving too fast for you, huh? Trying to get y'all motivated here. Anyways, we're showing right now we got 24 projects, 15 that closed out, been completed to date, and then we got 8 that didn't quite make the time frame that we were working on. So we're carrying them in yellow, but we're going to try and close them puppies out as quick as we can. The under the budgetary, the referendum finance expenditures, as you can see on the screen, 174, 173, 410 was spent through October 31st. There you go. That's the ones that we got not quite closed out yet that are showing in the yellow. And a community outreach. The Robert Smalls Academy. They got the topping out ceremony scheduled for December the 7th with a drop-in lunch from 11:30 till 12:30. With a tour of the site if you're available for it. That'll go on at about 1 p.m. And then of course the topping out ceremony will happen at 2 p.m. The Battery Creek, they briefed the staff on November the 1st, and then they briefed the students at the SIC on November the 7th. And I don't think there was anything that came out of that required any additional follow-up. I think it was all well received. The same with May River High School CAT. My understanding is that Karen did a great job, and we've been approved to move forward with the design as is. That is a cut and dry, very short brief of a 95-page PowerPoint. Is there any questions?
If anyone has any questions, I can't see. Trisha.
Trisha's hand.
So
I got 5 echoing so's.
Yeah.
trying to be right. Teach me not to start a sentence.
All right, try it again.
Okay, this presentation was the one given to Clock like 2 weeks ago, right? So we're just a little bit out of our normal cycle. Can you share with us any of the thoughts or concerns that Clock had with any of this? Because, you know, their input's just really crucial to us, and normally we hear it after our meeting.
I mean, we didn't have, on the finance side, there are a couple of comments. We added the slide, let's see what page it's. A summary slide that they had commented on previously that they were happy with.
Okay.
Back in the financial section, 86.
Okay.
It's kind of where we summarized, including the bond premium, current budget. That was something they wanted to see. They were happy with that.
Okay.
I can't think of any other big items that came up in that conversation.
And so after seeing this financial update, did they ask and what are the thoughts that we're gonna have enough money to finish everything out?
Well, as far as on our side, we are continuing to state that we feel that there's funding available to complete all the projects in their entirety. So there is nothing right now that has us concerned on the existing side. And one of the things we did talk about at that, which is the latest, which through October, was that we actually received some money back that was larger. And I think we talked about that with the board before they approved that amendment, forget which one, that was over budget, that we actually have received quite a bit of funding back that we didn't expect. So that is balanced out, funding that was a little over. So as far as we're concerned with budget and getting things done, we're still on track.
That's all I have, Ms. Boatright.
Mr. Campbell?
Those delayed projects that were, which, yeah, that's not cost us any more because it's being delayed.
Well, I wish I could say the answer to that was no, but the correct answer is yes, that will cost us. Because in order to keep the project, and I'll say we have to do it, because we can't wait. If we wait, we slow down construction and even lose more money. What we're going to do is, because what the electrical switchgear does is let you turn the building on. Lets you turn your air conditioning on, so you can start doing all the finished work inside. So without it coming, we have a program in place to do generators and all that. And I actually think the cost is about, say, $300,000 range in order to have temporary power.
Tell that, but the cost of that delivery of that delayed stuff is going to be, that's significant.
Well, there is no additional cost, it is time, but time extra is money.
Yeah,
And that's just one of those things that I mean, we ordered it over a year ahead of time. It's just one of those, and that's a problem throughout construction is electrical switchgear. Can't imagine trying to start a project right now, big project, because you have to order it 18 months ahead. You almost got to order it before you start construction.
Not only electrical, but also HVAC has got a long lead time on too. So,
Still.
and it is like Robert said, it's national. It's not just the local area.
Thing I, if I could, y'all know what the topping out ceremony is? You know? or-
I mean, when it is,
Yes.
December seventh?
so,
December seventh.
Yeah, you remember from May River, you sign the last steel beam and they'll put the last beam on the building and there's a lunch and well, it's kind of like a groundbreaking. We'll have a ceremony.
What time is it, Robert?
Well, the ceremony itself is at 2:00. We'll be doing a tour of the school at 1:00. There's a drop-in lunch between 11:30 to 12.
I was clear about that, but let's drop it.
They will be having a lunch with contractors. So the whole construction group will be there. You know, if you can't make it, that's fine. If you make it 12 o'clock, 12:15, come on in, grab some lunch, sit down and in the group. So that's what it means.
Because I saw the mural on the wall. It's not.
Those are all just samples. So those aren't finals, but that's what the final one's going to be.
So Robert Dave just pointed this out, but it does say 2023,
Ah,
but it is this next week, right?
yes, it is next week. We will make that correction. Thank you for.
Advance the whole year.
Wow.
Well, you know, let's switch gears that far out, so we're really far ahead. No, that should be
Everybody's doing us again, so.
2022.
Yeah.
Thank you. for finding it.
I was hoping she didn't see. That's why I said 22.
I wish I could. Take something for having it done.
There's another significance to December 7th.
D-Day.
D-Day.
Is that D-Day? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, I don't see other questions. I did want to say that I appreciated you guys coming out to the SIC with the plans for the field house. Those were well received. And I know that you and Tim and Mr. Otting and Carol Crutchfield were all there, which was really nice to answer questions. I think other than, I mean, we've got Hilton Head Mill to finish, the field house and the field house renovation, and then May River Kate. I mean, we're kind of getting to the end of the big projects, right?
I guess, yes, they're all underway. So we're moving forward with everything, all the large projects.
Yeah, I'll have a little feeling of relief when we get the GMPs for the May River and the field house and you know, all the final stuff for Hilton Head Middle, because then I think we can manage those other expenses a lot. There won't be as many big surprises.
Now, we do have the GMP for Hilton Head Middle.
Yes.
That's
Right. I guess
already-
I'm thinking, I worry about, you know, cost overruns or something coming up that we didn't know about, but yeah, seems like we're kind of getting down to the
Yeah.
small details, which is nice.
I believe we looked 85% of the project, 85% of the funding is encumbered or spent at this point. So we only have 15% of the money left. It's not accounted.
Well, great. I guess there really aren't any other questions at this point, so we can go ahead and move on to OE 15.
14. 50 horse.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody had a nice 4-day holiday weekend. I know I sent you like probably 500 pages here. We're not going to spend hours going over all those. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to view them, but I'll just start with the some bad news I got this week in the sheriff's department. The CRO program, which we've talked about at numerous board meetings throughout the last probably 6 or 7 years. We've had 5 CROs that have assisted me with all of our lockdowns and our trades training, and that program, at least for the rest of this year, is no longer happening. They have manpower issues, so they were actually down to 2 CROs that they've been assigned to schools at this point. So for the rest of this year, we don't have any CROs. But the flip side of that is, for the first time last week, and then even today, we have coastal security that's in every single school, all the elementaries and the early childhood Also here at the district office. Today was the first day that the officer was here at the district office. So that is now fully manned, fully running. It took a little more time than we thought, but I think we got better quality candidates all the way around, both of them we had with the other companies. So guys, when I go through with these, each one of these sections, if you got any questions about the security company we use, you can ask me now if you want.
What document do you want up the
That
executive
was attachment
summary
one.
or one attachment one?
Yeah,
And
that's
just go through all,
security.
go through all attachments.
Yeah, I'm gonna go through each one.
Alright.
Or somebody else
Right.
will.
And also we have present, Ms. Boatright and Mr. Campbell. We have present with us today, Ms. Andrea Murray and Ms. Alvilda Graham, who will be talking about the important roles that they play in safety and security and what they do to protect our students.
Okay, attachment 2 is with Graham for bullying.
Come to the table.
I'll sit.
We appreciate all the work that you've done in the
And Mr. Grissom, would you prefer questions as you go or questions at the
I
end?
would, if you don't mind, it's up to you guys. I would prefer questions as you go.
Okay, perfect.
And I want to take this opportunity to thank Ms. Graham and Ms. Murray for all their hard work for our district. And thank you for being with us today. We know you're busy. We don't want to keep you too long. And thank you.
So the district has done a better job this year, in my opinion, of delegating some roles that we didn't have in the past. Ms. Graham for the bullying section, Ms. Murray for who's in charge of the gaggle. I think I've told you guys in the past that some days I'd get 15, 20 gaggle reports every single day and into the night. Now, Ms. Murray's in charge of that, and she'll be going over that shortly here. So, Ms. Graham, if you want to discuss any of the bullying things we do for the district.
Yes, of course. Good afternoon, everyone. I apologize, I'm a little bit under the weather. One of the things that I do in my role is I work in conjunction with our schools to make sure that when bullying reports come in on our See Something, Say Something app, that we investigate those in a timely manner. Even if a student admits or omits any type of information, I think it's very important for schools to thoroughly investigate to see if there's actually bullying occurring. And if they are, what are some things that we can do to make sure that we assist the student and their families and provide resources. There have been other reports that come through. I know we've had some safety reports that come through about weapons at school. So that app is actually very useful for our students and our parents to make sure that they communicate any type of bullying, harassment, or any type of other statements that come in. Let's see. Another thing that we have been doing is working very closely with our school counselors to make sure that we provide resources for schools and get the information out to our students regarding bullying. Just last week, and I wish that you all could have been present, we went out to Beaufort High School and we went over to River Ridge Academy and Hilton Head Middle. The Beaufort High School students did their See Something, Say Something play. So they actually performed that for our 6th grade middle school students, and that was actually successful. The Rotary of the Low Country came out and they were supportive as well, provided information regarding, and they have an anti-bullying project that we actually work with them in collaboration to make sure that we're getting that message out to our communities as well. To let everybody know that Beaufort County School District takes bullying very seriously. We want to make sure that we can get the anti-bullying message out, along with some of the things that we can do in partnerships with our businesses to make sure that we can keep our entire community safe. Now, if anyone has any questions that you'd like for me to answer, I don't want to omit anything, but if you have any questions regarding the poll, just please let me know, and maybe I can answer those questions that would be most helpful, most useful.
I have a couple of questions about the bullying thing. Ms. Fidrich, did you have a question?
No, not right now. Thanks.
So one of my questions with the bullying, I see that you give an example of the See Something, Say Something with location of incident not being at the school.
Yes, ma'am.
Are there any parameters about how this gets reported, or is the school now in charge of everything that happens 24/7? I mean, can you explain more about that?
So when the app was created, there's some things that happen, like sometimes kids aren't as willing to report something while they're at school. They may be at home and they say, this happened today, I want to make sure that I report it. So it could be something that they reported that happened when they're at home. Maybe someone texted something to them, and this is something that happened outside of the school day. But unfortunately, as we all know, it actually carries over into the school day, the next day, a lot of times. So a lot of times schools have to investigate those type of incidences that happen. So yeah, there really aren't any parameters regarding it, but if it comes into our app, we want to make sure that we report it, because again, a lot of times it carries over to the school, until the school day, unfortunately.
What's our investigative authority for things that happen? I mean, because I'm like wondering, like, what if it's not another Beaufort County School District student, or someone's reporting, could a kid who's not a Beaufort County School District report a Beaufort County School District student to see something? You know what I mean? Like, how do we investigate things outside of our, I mean, I think there's got to be a question of jurisdiction here, right?
Yes, ma'am, and that's a really good question. Right now, that app is on the desktop of all of our student devices. It is also on our district website. We have not, knock on wood, had an opportunity or had an instance where we had someone outside of our district report, but that is something that we can look into and determine if that's what we need to put in place. That is a really good question. I've actually never thought about that we may want to look at, trying to see if we can put some type of safeguards in place to ensure that that doesn't happen.
Well, I'm just thinking it from a parent perspective. If someone reported my child as bullying, on a weekend at a sleepover or something, I don't know if I want the school to necessarily take a leadership role in investigating that. You know what I mean? I just, that I don't know. Seems like it's a brave new world, I guess.
Yes, ma'am, and that is a really good question. A lot of times things like that happen. There is something that happens on the weekend, or there may be a neighborhood party that kids have, and we communicate with our parents to make them aware, because schools communicate with parents to say, hey, just want to let you know this report came in, and they do communicate that information to parents to make them aware of what's going on with the yes, ma'am.
Final follow-up on this, because what makes me nervous, I guess, is that when you start involving the school, you start involving like their record. So if you guys are getting these reports from outside of school property, outside of, school hours, et cetera, and there's an investigation, how does that work in terms of the student educational record? Is there some sort of due process that would occur before it goes into the school record?
I don't think this would necessarily go into the school record at all.
Okay.
I think once the school gets notified, when you say bullying, I mean, that bullying could be, I just got a gaggle alert that talks about killing somebody. So school would have a duty to report it to the SRO, the police officer in the school. At that point, it's up to them what happens with it, but it wouldn't necessarily be record that we keep at the school. If it happened outside of school on a weekend at somebody's house, but we do have an obligation to report that, especially if certain words are used or certain terminology
Certain
is used.
keywords or buzzwords are used in the report. Yes.
Okay. Mr. Smith has his hands up. Mr. Smith?
My first question would be, have we spoke with the sheriff in regarding this app prior to today?
To the sheriff, sir?
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Have we
We
spoke?
first got the app, we spoke with the sheriff. It's probably been several years. I can't tell you how long ago, 3, 4, 5 years ago, maybe.
It's been a while.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
But yes, when we first got the app, the meetings were had with the sheriff.
And they take on the
Mr. Smith, you're doing that electronic voice thing.
meeting recently, and I'm not sure. Okay. I said the reason why I'm asking that is because I was in a meeting recently, and the sheriff was saying something. I think about one of the apps, and I'm wondering if this is the app that he was talking about. And I don't think that the message received from it may be this app here that he didn't convey that it was an app that he thought was
Answer his question.
Mr.
Smith,
and
I
that's
can
why
answer
I'm
your question
wondering.
real quick.
Could you
What I
hear that
believe the
clearly?
sheriff was talking about was the Gaggle app, which we're gonna go over in a few minutes. That's a totally different app, but we're gonna go over that in just a few minutes.
Yeah.
In fact, that's next.
Yeah, and we may, to call it an app, we may kind of be over exaggerating the point. It's more of a Google form. It's not so much an app. Gaggle is more of an app. This is a form that the district created, so it's more of an in-house form that's created basically a Google form, but we call it an app because it is an icon on the desktop. So it's not an app per se that's monitored by a company. It's just a Google form that we, the district, created. Yes.
And, before we go into that though. So before we go into that.
Mr. Smith, just wait a minute. Look, we need to get you to a better location. Go ahead, Ms. Fidrich.
Thank you. So just looking at the chart that's on display right now and looking at the basically 1,400 responses that were in see something, say something, right? Between August and now, is that correct? I think that's what it says, right? It says August 15th to November 14th.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So you can see from there that it's there's a disproportionate amount from one particular school.
Yes, ma'am.
So can you speak to what does that say to you? How do you address that, or what kind of action does that prompt you to need or want to do?
So one of the things that we try to do is make sure that we are providing more training and services regarding MCSS processes within those schools that have large numbers of reports. But you do have to keep in mind that a lot of the reports could be something simple as sometimes kids unfortunately misuse the app, the form, and it could be, I left my paper at home. I'm just kind of giving you an example, but it still shows up for that school. So you have to keep that in mind as well. A lot of those reports that are in there could be something, and I know you're on the app as well. Some of the reports aren't necessarily what we consider issues of bullying, but kids sometimes put things in there. We also have to talk about the proper use of the app on the form as well. So that's something that we have to address as well. That gets addressed. Yeah.
Right. So it's not just because, I mean, that's K-8, it's one of our K-8, but
Yes,
then
ma'am.
also you look at, one of the other K-8s and it doesn't have that same
Yes,
type of
yes.
preponderance of use.
But I will say that a lot of the times that the reports are primarily in the middle school grades,
Yeah.
6 through 8 versus the elementary grades. But yeah, that I noticed that there is one school that seems to have more reports than other schools, but some of the reports are really, I don't want to say unfounded, but some of them are usually
Some are incomplete.
yes.
Sure.
Sometimes it's homework, to be honest with you.
Yes.
Homework assignment.
There are times when it'll just give the school,
And
this
that's
won't have the name of anything.
nothing in the
That's
body
all
of it.
Yeah.
But it still counts.
Yeah.
Right.
In terms of.
So can you break that out to your lower and middle grades?
Yeah, there's a way we
break
can.
it?
There's a way that we can, yes, ma'am.
I mean, that would be more interesting because then you would see, whether it is grouped with the middle schools.
Yes, ma'am.
Otherwise, so, okay.
And thank you for bringing
Thank
that up.
Even more, I guess deep dive could be looked at in terms of those numbers. I mean, who are the kids, what race they are, what their economic background, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know, that might not be yours alone, it may be also instructional and other components of the district, but we need to know if we're gonna do things to correct that.
Yes,
Right.
Who's complaining and speak to English point. I think the concern should be if our kids are being bullied. Now, if they're the ones making the report, whether someone outside is doing the bullying or not. But if our kids are being bullied, then that's where our response should be.
yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Unfortunately, the form does not collect information. It doesn't collect I guess gender and ethnicity. It doesn't ask for that information at all. So that
Yeah,
part is
I don't mean to know who they are.
yeah, of course.
I mean to know the makeup of the school, comparatively speaking.
Yeah.
Know what I mean? And what's that? Our small international,
Yes, sir.
what does that makeup look like and how does it compare with the other school, for example, who does not have that kind of significant number? And,
Yeah,
that might give us some indicators that we can look into in terms of
I agree. The demographic of the school
the culture.
can be very important.
Yeah, the culture of the school is impacted by bullying.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Mr. Smith's hand's still up.
Yeah, so William?
Yes, and also, and just to actually to speak to that, I have had several parents and I have had several concerns in terms of bullying coming from that school. So I do feel that that number is accurate because I have had a lot of people that have reached out with concerns from that school. So I will not say that those numbers aren't somewhere near probably accurate. So that is I do agree that is a concern, and I think that the question is now is who, what, where, when, why, and how, and what the question would be, what are we doing in terms of reducing those numbers, and how are we responding to that school in terms of but what not just what's the recourse, but what services are we providing to the leadership at that school to reduce those numbers?
Yes, sir. And then, all right, thank you for bringing it up, Mr. Smith. One of the things that we are doing, our student services department, Dr. Skaggs has been going over and working with the leadership at that school as well, and working with them and training them on some of the MTSS strategies to kind of deal with not only bullying, but some type of soft skills and other skills that you can put in place to help students. So that has been going on as well. So there are some things that we are doing as a district to make sure that we find a way to support them and what's going on there at the school. And I will tell you that our schools are very responsive, very quick to respond to the reports when they're sent over. They provide us with a detailed update as to what was investigated and what the next steps were from the school standpoint. Yes.
Okay, the next attachment 3 is going to be gaggle reports. Ms. Murray's going to talk to us about that. But just to let you know, while I'm sitting here, and Ms. Murray's going to explain the process in a second here, we got a gaggle report, strangely enough, from Robert Smalls that uses keywords like going to kill and kill me. These type of things come in all day long, to be honest with you. I mean, 10 to 15 per day throughout the district. And Ms. Murray will explain the process to you, what happens with these gaggle alerts. Sorry.
And Gaggle is actually a software that we have, and what it does is pick out keywords such as kill me, kill myself, beat up, threaten. They're just some buzzwords that Gaggle automatically picks up. It then sends out
It's where it picks up from where?
from kids' computers. Anytime they type anything on their computer, because what our students do is they message to one another while they're in class, which they're not supposed to do, but it happens. And if some buzzwords, kill myself, KMS, threatening someone else.
But not like a Word document.
No, yes, anything on their computer.
There's a whole bunch of keywords, right?
It picks up on, as long as they're typing on their computer, this software picks it up. And then what it does is send a email in the message. We have 2 different levels. We have a questionable content, which may be just, sometimes it's an essay that they may be writing. But I met with the high schools, because it's usually the high school, and on our chart, you'll see that May River is disproportionately represented. Well, that's why, because they have an English assignment that's an essay. So I met with principal and school counselors, and when they put, what they're supposed to do is put in their subject line, English essay or college essay, to alert me when I see it, to know that it's an essay. And then I just go in and actually put that, and they still send me. What happens is I get a notification. It goes to all the principals in the buildings, some assistant principals, but always the school counselor and school social workers. So that the school counselor or school social worker or admin, there's some behavior management specialists on there as well, whomever gets the alert and can get to the student first to meets with them, then they email back to me that we've met with this student, this was an essay. And I said, yeah, I know, because it was in the line. Or they say, they didn't mean to, because sometimes kids type in things and they really don't mean to use those words. And sometimes like, I don't know why they do it, but sometimes when, you know, when they get called into the offices, they're like, wow, you know, so, they don't realize that those words are gonna set off a reaction. So, but what happens, the notification is sent out. I then follow up with that notification and, ask for an update to be provided. So that's how we handle it for now, but I just got through doing some training, and what the schools will actually be able to do once I've met with them is they'll be able to click on the link themselves and put what they email to me in. And then that alert will come back to me and I can go in and click resolve.
Okay.
So, yeah, we're trying to cut down on the back and forth emailing. So all they'll have to do is just click on the link itself, put in what they did, and it'll be resolved. And then I see everything, like Dave said, even over the holiday last week, I literally had to check gaggles because you have to have one person here at the district who is able to be reached 24/7, 365, and that's me. So I had to keep track of gaggles that came in even through last week. But what we are working on, because this year we purchased gaggle after hours so that we can work in conjunction with dispatch, with emergency dispatch, so that officers can go out when we receive said gaggle, speaking of suicide or wanting to hurt or harm someone themselves, so that the officers can go out. Right now, it hasn't happened yet because they have to get a dedicated email in place that can distribute to the dispatchers so that they can send law enforcement out, be it Beaufort County Sheriff's Office, Beaufort Police Department, or Bluffton Police Department. But we have been in talks with them and we're just waiting. I email him every week to follow up on it. But right now, gaggle after hours consists of me and the director of school counseling. So she's my backup person. So, so that there's someone, because they automatically, if they don't receive a response, they text. And if they don't receive a response that it was received, then they call. So, I mean, I've gotten calls 11 o'clock at night, 2 in the morning, just to let them know, yes, I have it. I will get, you know, I've been on Sundays, I've been on the phone with APs who are trying to get an officer out to a home because of what came through on gaggle. So basically, I monitor it all day long, every day, until we can get gaggle after hours in place. And even then, I will still be the person to contact in case it goes through dispatch and they can't get the basic demographic information. I still have to be there to talk with them in case that happens.
So I have a, you know, it's not so much I mean, it's a question, it's kind of a large philosophical question about all this stuff, because I think that security in the schools is really a balancing act, you know, between discipline and security. And this gaggle thing, I kind of like it. I also get concerned about, you know, this sort of surveillance 24/7. Obviously, if a kid is talking about suicide, it's good to know, but I know my kid, I've told this story before, was joking about a project they were working on. And he said jokingly, "Oh, please stop bullying me." And I mean, it was all hands on deck there at I got a call, we got to come in, you can talk to a kid about. And so I'm assuming that with this after hours that you kind of turn up the threshold. So that if the kids, you know,
Ms. Boatwright, after hours are for the PSS. And when I say PSS, that's it's called a possible student situation. And that's in the event that a student is talking about harming themselves, harming someone else. So it comes in red with a big, large exclamation point on it. So we always know when we get those that we act on all of them, but those supersede everything, because we want to ensure that if a child is feeling, you know, having suicidal ideation or, you know, wanting to hurt or harm others, that we act upon that. And those are the alerts in which they would contact me about.
okay, so let me just, I think the best way for me to understand is I give you like a potential scenario and you tell me what would happen on your end. So my kid, now, generally speaking, my kid's on his own device, but let's say for some reason he's working on a project and he says something like, "Oh my gosh, this is killing me," or, you know, something, there's a lot of slang, "Kill me now," you know, "This is ridiculous. I can't believe we have to write this essays due at midnight." Something like that. You get some sort of an alert.
Yes, I would, but it would not be a PSS alert. it would be a QC alert, and QC meaning questionable content. So
Okay.
everything doesn't automatically escalate to the red.
So who decides what's questionable content and what's PSS?
Gaggle does. The
Gaggle
software, the software, yes.
Okay. I mean, I'm, I think that the schools have been unfairly held responsible for a lot of security issues. And so it's tough. It's also you can't make it 100% safe. I mean, these are teenagers and middle school students, and they're gonna, be rough on each other and whatnot. It's just trying to find that balance, because as a parent, I do not want to see the sheriff's office at my door because my kid made a bad joke or sent out a bad meme. It does make me feel a little funny.
No, only if it's, like I said, anything dealing with suicidal ideations or wanting to hurt or harm someone else. That's those are the red flag ones.
As determined by GAG.
If I could put it in color, those are red and the questionable contents are orange. So, if that helps, yeah. And we do get a lot of questionable content. And yes, we do follow up with every single one. And Dave is correct, he gets them. However, when I push out according to who needs to get it. Because
I think questionable content would be a great name for a movie about high school students. I mean, that is just 90% of what they do is questionable content. It's a lot to sort of keep track of. So, and my other question, which kind of goes along with this, Ms. Graham, you are the administrator of student success. And am I correct that Derek Skaggs is the director of student success?
Yes, ma'am, you are correct.
And that is kind of a euphemism for discipline. Is that, I mean, what's student success is obviously kind of a nice way of saying, is this discipline, security, or kind of a little bit of both?
I would think it would be a combination of the two, that it kind of crosses over.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And also just a last minute comment with Gaggle, we also get harassment and bullying through there too. So they kind of overlap. That's also another way for students to report if they're being bullied or if they're being threatened. We also get that as well. And I always include Ms. Graham in those notifications.
For how long have we been doing this?
Yeah, we've been doing Gaggle, I think this is our third or fourth year. But we just implemented the Gaggle after hours this year.
Yeah, so what kind of statistics do we have? Yeah, that can tell us
Well, from
anything at all.
from July 1st to November 13th of this year, we have had 30,665 items to review. And that constitutes Gaggle spending 263.2 hours reviewing them. We can break it down incident by day of the week and type, incident by time of the day and type. We have the incidents by categories. It breaks it completely.
Yeah, all right. And I know you got that, but I mean, what has it done for us?
What it has done for us.
Yeah, for us as a district, as a school site, as a et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Why are we doing it?
Some of the students that we have come in contact with some of the Gaggles have had an opportunity to be referred for wraparound services. They've been referred to mental health, getting any type of wraparound service that they need, and also connecting the family.
Right, that's what
Yes, sir.
how do those numbers correspond to real action that can do some things?
It helps us with, and even when we get vaping, because a lot of kids go in here and they tell about students in restrooms vaping. So that in turn turns into a referral to, they get discipline and also a referral to Beaufort County Alcohol Drug Abuse Department. So it does reach out and provide those wraparound services for whatever you encounter.
And you do have a recording of the incidents.
Yes, through discipline, yes.
Where repeating.
And even if they do a self-harm and there's something about suicide, we have the threat assessment or the suicide assessment. And we can follow up with those at any time, we can pull them.
Okay.
Liam's hands up. Ingrid.
Sorry, I could not unmute. Mr. Smith, sorry, go ahead. Is he still there?
Looks like it. We can't understand him again.
I know. Mr. Smith, your voice has that very drawn out electronic sound and it's hard to understand. If you want, we can come back to you, or if you want to put your question in the chat, that might, work as well, because we can't understand.
Campbell hit a one point. Yeah, I'm here.
Okay,
Can you
now
hear
we
me?
can hear you. Yeah, let's give it another quick try.
No problem.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say I have the same concern that Mr. Campbell had in terms of some of these services. I'm wondering, are we? One of my concerns: are we spreading ourselves? I won't say too thin, but also are we making ourselves liable for other litigation as well in offering some of these services? And I'm just concerned that we may have a lot going on with some of the services that we're offering. I mean, I think that needs to be looked at too within the districts as a whole best of interest.
Mr. Smith, I don't understand your question or statement.
Maybe if I may, I think he's asking that, are we opening ourselves up to any liability by the fact that once we find out about something like this through Gaggle, if it, could lead to some type of liability?
Mr.
I don't
Smith,
know
we
if I
have, no,
interpreted that
I mean,
correctly.
we have the duty to protect our children and to make sure that they're safe, and we're mandatory reporters, so we have to do everything we can to protect them and to also to work with their families and give them whatever services are needed so that they can be successful. We don't want anybody making a suicide attempt. We want to prevent when someone gets to that point, they're that desperate. We want to be able to help them in any way that we can. Because it's unfortunate what's happened in our world, but that is a present danger on teenagers. We need to address it as hard as it is.
And I do understand that. However, just with even with these groups, with the Mom with Liberties and just all these other groups that are going on now, and things happening after hours that may be done at home, I'm not sure if these parents may see this as infringement upon their rights to
Well, yeah, we can't understand what you're saying.
like, one of the board members might have said, or someone might just said that they don't want a deputy coming to their house over the weekend if their son missing test.
The only thing I can answer, Mr. Smith, is when it has happened, the parent had absolutely no problem with it. It has happened a couple times due to what was put into Gaggle. We had to send officers out, and I believe one parent was a little upset at first, but once she found out what was going on, she was glad to have known that that's what was going on with her student.
Then
Okay.
our responsibility is to err on the other side. I mean, we can't afford to have something slip up because we didn't do our due diligence and something happened. I don't mind that parent being upset and finding out what really went on. But if we don't alert that parent that this happened and something really does go on, then we'll be in for suit. So yeah, I don't think we can allow certain pockets to decide what is safety for our children.
Okay, well, I think that we have discussed that and given feedback, so we can move on to, is that all for Gaggle or did you have more for Gaggle?
No, I did provide the reports,
Okay.
and I do them monthly. So at any time, if anyone wants them, I do get them monthly. But I provided everything in the board docs.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was definitely interesting. Okay, so we're on to 4, right, Mr. Grissom?
Yeah, actually we're gonna go on to number 5. If you got any questions about four, I'd be glad to answer them, but we'll apply for now.
No, I think I was just trying to keep track of all there's a
Yeah.
lot of attachments.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, there's.
So, in attachment 5 is pretty much the same things that I present to you guys every year. My mandatory parades training and the dates schools have done them. Again, they're required to do 2 trainings, per year. With parades with the local police departments. The lockdowns are the same, 3 lockdowns per year. One of which will occur like at lunch or during a passing period. Also, I supplied you guys the proper procedure for a canine search, the form we're using. The police department fills out for each individual school. So as of right now, I think we've completed all of our canine searches, but 2. Those are scheduled, one for this Wednesday and one for December 7th, I believe. That will complete all the mandatory requirements for the canine search. I wouldn't think you guys would have any questions about the drills. It's the same thing we do every year.
Nope, I don't see any hands up, so we can keep moving.
Okay.
Can I just ask one
Oh, sorry.
question? So, Mr. Grissom, what is our responsibility when it comes to, Riverview? As far as, do they have to report to you that they have, complied with the lockdown, requirements and so on?
I don't believe so. I didn't keep track of them.
Okay.
Dr. Rodriguez did approach me last week and him and I said we need to sit down and talk about Riverview.
Yeah.
But we'll probably do that one day this week. But as of so far, I've never kept track of anything that they've done.
Well, and I know, I mean, they're a separate entity with their own board and stuff, but I'm just wondering, I was thinking about all our schools here. And what you provided us. So I also had a question then, so what do our ECCs have to do?
Same
There's
exact,
one right here, so they have the exact same
exact same
thing,
requirements.
lockdown
Correct.
requirements and stuff.
Exact same
Yeah.
requirements.
So I
yes.
guess that would be my only thought is that, and maybe in the annual report of Riverview, maybe they give that to us.
They're responsible for making sure that those
Or
those
done.
drills take place. And
So
we
I-
have to
I
make
just
sure they
didn't know if they
comply with all.
reported that to
They-
us.
So I don't want to speak for Dr. Rodriguez, but he did mention to me that we're gonna put something out to them and offer my services for all these different things that we do. That way it's up to them, but we're gonna offer the same type of things that we do for all of our schools to them.
Okay,
That's probably gonna occur one day this week.
okay,
So,
thank you. Thank you, Ms. Boatwright.
The next attachment is 6. And I don't know if Robert wants to talk on that or we can talk on that, the fire safety program for Beaufort County Schools.
Well,
No, I
that,
mean, so
that,
maybe when you can talk about it.
that we presented that to you all this summer, that was a requirement from the State Department.
It's a new requirement we did this year for the first time.
And so we are in compliance with that, and we had our attachments in there that show we're doing all the inspections and testing that have to be done. So, and we've submitted that to the Department of Ed.
Correct.
So you've already gone through all that. Yeah.
And then the last one, attachment 7. This is when Jerry Henderson was gonna be here, but she couldn't make it, but she's been going around to every single school and doing her safety presentation. And during that presentation, she goes over roles and responsibilities for the entire staff. You guys can go through that.
Yeah.
I think she's met with every single school but one up to this point. So one more school she needs to meet with. She normally goes there. There's probably about 10 members with their safety team. They're all there. It's normally about a 2-hour meeting. Sometimes while she's doing that, if I'm available, I go to the school. Just as she's doing that, I walk through the school and do my safety audit, checking doors and doing different things. And then I come back to that meeting and report to her and the staff what I found at their particular school, and we go over those items. So again, we've done every school but one, I believe. The second half of the year, after Christmas, we're going to start doing tabletop exercises with every single school in regards to different scenarios. Those will probably start sometime in January.
Are there any questions down there? Ms. Vidrich?
So Dave, could you just share how, the lessons that we learned from Beaufort High Schools, lockdown, how has that been shared with other schools? Because obviously, I think with the recovery and, having gone through the entire process with Vignet all the way through,
Right.
through reunification,
Right.
that's the word, reunification. So what is the plan, or how is some of the lessons learned from that incident going to be sent out to the other schools?
Wow, there's so much to unpack there. I would say the biggest thing that I learned, and maybe even the senior staff here, was to make sure everybody's on the same page with terminology. For example, when we were at Beaufort High, I don't think the sheriff and the chief ever wanted us to do reunification. I think they wanted us to go down to the gym and dismiss from there. But they kept using the term reunification. With the term reunification comes a whole new aspect for accountability. That requires the district team to come out and forms to be filled out. And what we've done in the meantime is make sure everybody's on the same page with terminology for reunification, for all the different things we're doing. That's probably the biggest thing that I got out of it.
Yeah, no, and so that's great. So that's conversation you've had with the sheriff's
Yes,
department.
yes.
So what lessons that you learned from that event, how is that being given to like May River or Hilton Head High or the other schools?
That's right. That's something we're working on right now for the second half of the year. When we go around and do tabletop exercises,
Okay,
we're gonna incorporate all that with those exercises
okay,
to go over what we've learned all the way through whatever incident we give them, all the way through
got
reunification.
it, okay,
It's gonna be a long drawn out, law enforcement's gonna be involved, the fire department's gonna be involved. They're gonna have to react and answer questions all the way through
Okay.
reunification.
right. Because I think you guys learned a lot.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's just important to make sure that that gets out to everybody.
I think most of the schools now, from the meetings we've had, with the principals in here, they all know now that this is not something that their schools can do. They initially they thought, well, we can handle this ourselves.
Yeah.
But now they know from what happened at Beaufort High, there's no way that each school can do their own.
Okay,
This is definitely a district thing, and we even learned something. 25 people was not enough. We needed 40 people
got
there.
it.
So I think schools now know that this is not something they can
That's
do.
good.
So
So,
they're gonna be a victim too, or whatever. This is a district responsibility.
okay, thank you.
And if you had any other questions about any of the other items we covered, be glad to answer them.
No,
No, I think that looks great.
So-
I appreciate it.
Ms. Boatright, I'd like to make a motion that
Please.
the operations committee recommend to the full board acceptance of OE 15 safety and security annual monitoring report.
Mr. Campbell, you up for seconding that?
Did already.
All right, all in
Yes.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Robin, that was unanimous. Ms. Cushenberry?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grissom. You have a very challenging job and we appreciate the efforts that you and your staff make to keep 20,000 children safe every day.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Chris's on 24/7, always doing his best. Thank you. Mr.
Okay, see you guys.
Aye.
All right.
I know, this is all here. Yeah, thank you. I just spread off.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have FOIA.
Yes, and board members, I had the periodic monitoring report, but Robin, I'm only supposed to be doing an annual monitoring report, correct? We don't do periodic monitoring reports anymore, is that right?
I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
So Ms. Boatright, I, in the past, I'd done a periodic monitor, we had prepared a periodic monitoring report. And we were having a discussion, senior staff, about you're only supposed to, the board only wants us to do an annual monitoring report. This is ready as a periodic monitoring report, but what we discussed in senior staff was that the board only wants the annual report. Is that what the will of the board? I just want to make sure.
Well, that's a good question because I kind of thought there was something that it was going to be quarterly FOIA reports, but I could be wrong.
But it's a quarterly report.
So the
Okay.
quarter reports you report out, and then at the end you put them all together and say, so on.
Okay.
On November 28th, we did our quarterly report.
Right,
On
but I don't have-
February, whatever.
So I don't have to do that anymore. Correct.
No, you need to make the report, the quarterly report.
Right.
So so if today's a quarterly report, that's
Right.
what you would make.
And we're no longer doing periodic monitoring. We're just doing the annual, correct?
No, see right here, it says, unless it specifically says it in the OE, is my
Okay.
understanding, it says the superintendent shall ensure request responses are tracked by calendar year and reported quarterly
Yes.
and an annual report.
Okay.
So I think what you're talking about is that there are some other OEs and it doesn't specifically say,
Right.
like a monthly construction. If it
Right.
doesn't specifically say it, then it's an annual.
But so what I'm trying to ask is.
Like the finance, they do the finance committee brings together, they bring quarterly reports.
Right.
They don't have to vote on it. And then at the end, they will sit there and say, so I report, their annual report is, I reported on this and this and this and this on this date, and they give a annual report.
Right, so I don't have to do a periodic monitoring report.
I think we're using wrong terminology. I think
I
Right,
just
that's
that's
want
what, I don't know what
Am
periodic
I
is.
supposed to do this document? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
disregard that document
Okay,
at the
that's
moment,
right,
because
just wanna make sure.
I'm not sure what, yeah, disregard that document.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm doing what I'm
Do your,
supposed to do.
do your quarterly report.
Okay, so so for our second, so for our quarter. Hey, Mr. Smith. So for this report, which we include from the beginning of the year, but it ends at the end of the third quarter. This is the report that goes through September, goes through September 30th. We've actually included more past that date because we were not able to do we didn't get to do the quarter report not back in October because we already had the agenda full enough.
So.
Ms. Goodrich, yes, please.
So the only question I had on this FOIA report was that there are several places where it said, the report was requested and the received date was, sometimes over a month later, and it's an asterisk says delay in receiving due to issue with Outlook.
Yeah.
So Jess, if you could just talk a little bit about that and talk about the resolution of that.
Sure. So, yeah, so we use JotForm right now for our FOIA processes. JotForm someone will submit the form and then JotForm spits it out to whoever is supposed to receive the form via an email.
You can do what JotForm is.
Yeah, JotForm is like any form, like a FOIA form on the website. Like you go in and you fill out on the website a form, and then the form will then populate and get sent via our Microsoft Outlook email. For whatever reason, there's been a couple of hiccups. I think there's been about 3 hiccups with this, where it didn't, for whatever reason, it didn't send it to Wendy and myself. It might have went into junk. Sometimes if people fill out, like if they have a Gmail, the system thinks it's spam sometimes. So I did talk to Mark about this. The reason we found it out was, I believe it was Mr. Bennett's request.
Yeah.
He said, hey, I'm checking in on my request. And I was like, we didn't receive that request. And he's like, no, here it is. Like I sent it. So then went back to IT, they ran a report like JotForm can also run an Excel sheet. And we saw that it showed up there, but we didn't get the email. So we went back again and then double checked some more. And then we found 2 more. And so now we're having to just keep cross checking. I say all that to say, we have been looking into getting a different software. I think Just FOIA. I think the town of Hilton Head uses that as well. Rob Confair and Mark are assisting with that. It would make the process much easier and we wouldn't have these hiccups. I think part of the problem is Outlook is actually very smart and it tries to be helpful, but we miss some things. And so it's a little frustrating. So yes, we did. Obviously, Terry Bennett got his thing. There was another one on here that was delayed. I called that individual. It was someone from California. It was a very, very extensive request and asking if they still needed the information. That person was actually a reporter. They have not gotten back to me. I'm assuming their story, if you will, has come and went. But it looked like to me that particular request was something they just sent out to districts all over the country to get information.
So I had a question about that. Are you talking about Matthew Maynard, the expensive one from California? It's like $1,100 or something. He wanted video. Can you FOIA our security camera?
That's that was the
That's a little different.
That's when you will know that one.
No, so in that particular case, this was a parent and under FERPA, we do not give out videos. We don't give out educational records because under FOIA, that is an exception to disclosure. We cannot give out information about students.
Well, and I would think you can't really FOIA security cameras, can you? I mean, don't you still need a court order to get that kind of stuff?
That's right, but it's about right. We get FOIA for all kinds of things.
Okay. But that would be a no.
We don't,
That's not something that we traditionally do.
that we don't provide that. We can't provide it.
Didn't even occur to me that you could FOIA security.
Can't. But it still comes in and we have to respond.
Okay.
Ms. Boatright, Mr. Smith has joined us in person.
Oh, good. Hi, Mr. Smith.
Yeah, I have a question as well. Just to go back to what she was saying about these FOIA programs. My question
is about these FOIAs. Is it, don't we have a person that looks directly over FOIA? Or is she not doing that anymore?
No, Ms. Staten does not do that anymore. It now falls in communications and Wendy and I.
So,
And Julian.
Yeah.
well, I as a board member, that with the importance of FOIA, we should have someone who those FOIA should go directly to in a computer program so that we don't have these situations.
I'll tell you this, Mr. Smith, that there is actually a job posted right now for a communications specialist, and one of their primary things will be FOIA. So that position will be hired. There's only been a few people that have applied thus far. Still going through the applications, but that has been approved, and that will be happening. I think you still need system though for them to, it can't just be a random email, because at least we had the backup, like we were able to run the report and check that, via the email as well.
Right.
I think you need kind of both things,
Yeah, both won't hurt, but it's good when you can call someone and talk and say, hey, I put a FOIA request in, and you know that you can hold. I talked to A, I called A and talked to A about my FOIA request because A knows about it, and that you actually know that they're actually trying to be in a timely manner fashion in terms of getting it done versus it losing to someone emailing, and something. I personally, I've had to call places where I've dealt with some things in terms of FOIA, and I know it can be difficult, and it really shouldn't be. It should be a simple request, and either they're going to deny it or they're going to grant the request.
Well, and I'll tell you, like, they're not as simple as you might think sometimes. Like, some of them are very expansive, and we do, as you see on there, we do have to charge because there's time to go through it.
When I said either they're going to grant it or they're not, I'm not talking in terms of that. I'm talking about in terms of getting back and saying, hey, I got it, give me some time.
Oh, sure.
And in terms of connecting with that actual person and having that conversation, knowing that you're not being annoyed, that your FOIA is just not in la la land.
I do hear you on that, and we've been trying also on that front, because I hear you, we've been getting a lot of FOIA requests, obviously.
Right.
And so we have been, working on keeping the website very much up to date, so you can go see whatever is open right now. Before we were putting up the final FOIA requests, but now we're putting them up as they're in process, so people can look and see where things are falling on that front too. But I agree with you, we do need, that's one reason I'm talking to Mark, so we can get a better FOIA platform, if you will.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, that's just one thing that is one part of our responsibility, and I don't want to get dinged because FOIA is something that you can't get dinged for. And I want to make sure that we're being proactive on it. Yeah.
Okay. So I forget, we put this on the consent report, right, in the past?
Yes. Yes.
So we accept it, right? Is that the correct A term?
I think so, yes.
Are there any other questions?
Accept the.
Actually, I do have a question in return of, on my way in, I was going in and out, but it was in terms of the Mr. report. Was that coming before the board or what was that entail? Because I did have a couple more questions. I do realize that he's gone, but is that report coming to the board or?
Yep. I think it's going to come to the board just like we did with the HR, which I'll bring it up. Will come as a motion under the committee report for operations. And we will have Mr. Grissom or one of his staff there to answer questions if needed.
Thank you.
Okay. So I guess, is there any other question about FOIA, or do we just need a motion to bring this to the full board?
Okay, I think I'll make a motion. That the operation committee recommends the full board acceptance of the OE 16.1 and 16.2 FOIA third quarter report.
Second.
And place on the consent agenda.
Yes.
I'll second again.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yeah. We're on a roll. 303030. Okay, which brings us to the final agenda item, which is something I had asked for. A discussion about principal requests in 8% funding projects. I see Mr. Otting, you're very tiny, but I see you coming to the table. There you go.
Far away from the camera.
That's what.
Meanwhile, I'm looming over everything.
Now, are you starting this conversation?
Well, when we had talked, yes, sure. One of my reasons I wanted to have this conversation is in light of the facilities assessment that we have now, which puts a really clear picture on the state of the various essential functions of the schools, right? HVAC, mechanical and electrical and casements, that we were really going to start using that to make some of these 8% decisions. And we had looked at and discussed, and I believe more or less approved sort of a more categorical approach rather than a super granular approach of sort of line by line. But in that, I have the last 2 years that I've been on operations, just a lot of concerns about how this principal's request comes about, because sometimes they're requests for things that I think should have been picked up by either maintenance or the facilities FAS. The facilities assessment, they're not really requests. It's sort of more, hey, there's a massive water leak, in the ceiling. That's not really a request. What I think of with how we're going to handle that. And would you really call that principal's request? And then secondarily, there's this whole category of sort of things that a principal would like to have done, money allowing. But the truth of the matter is, FCA, thank you. I was wondering with FCA, but I kept thinking Fellowship of Christian Athletes. So the FCA, when they have sort of the wants and needs, when we now have this heavily documented sort of list of needs and priorities. And my guess is that the $25 million we authorize isn't going to really cut that. And as an example, I think before a principal gets a digital sign for $15,000, we should make sure that, we don't have broken furniture in classrooms. So going forward, as we've adopted a more categorical approval process, and we have this very comprehensive FCA and the facility dude program, what role will principal request? How will we handle that?
Question for me?
Yeah, sure.
So a couple of points, that I'd like to make. One is that I do feel like there is a need to reach out to the schools to find out what they feel like the needs are in their buildings. They're in their buildings every day. There are things they come across that even the facilities condition assessment may not have found or may not have even been within their purview to review. I'll give you a couple of items that I think that are in the 2023 that made it to the list that I think are important. One is there was a request at Beaufort High for a set of stairs going down the back hill, coming out. I don't know which wing, what they categorize that wing is, but it's down to those athletic fields that are the back practice fields. Their concern was all the tree roots and the trip hazard when they have evacuations from the building. That was one that made the list that, on a facilities condition assessment, we don't find that because that's not necessarily a existing device that needs to be replaced or repaired. It's something that they found just through their evacuation routines that made its way to the list. Another example, St. Helen Elementary School, there is a teacher there that is in a wheelchair and there isn't wheelchair access out of her into the building. Well, that's an example where that's something that we may not have found that was brought to the attention through a principal's request. One of the other, go ahead.
No, I don't want to get into a back and forth, but I'm just think as we, because my train of thought tends to take off on me. So those two examples, what worries me is why they're not getting picked up by maintenance. There's safety and security and, handicap accessibility is a federal law. So to me, that's, is there no process outside of the FCA for picking up things that are like safety hazards or compliance with federal disabilities law? I don't feel like that's a principal request. And the part that worries me is if we don't have a process for that and we're reliant on principals to notify us, that puts a lot of liability. What if the principal doesn't notice that the set of stairs, you know, or doesn't know that they're supposed to report that, assuming that, you know, the maintenance or something is going to take care of that. I feel like that's putting a lot of responsibility. And I know personally, you know, there's a high level of technical skills among people, from doing minor housework, you know, that to being really on the ball and saying, hey, this doesn't work, this needs to be fixed. Are we relying on staff at the schools to notify us of those sorts of things? Because they're not inside the FCA?
So, I mean, there's a couple questions there. One, I'd say when we are notified, it does bring on an investigation, because we need to go see what extent it's needed and actually do kind of some costs, or come up with some information so a cost estimate can be done before it can even make the list. So we're not really, you know, and there are some things that are brought up that they may say is a safety concern, that when we're investigating, like, well, that's not truly a safety item. Let's just, you know, and I can't try and think of an example off the top of my head, but those do happen on a regular occasion. So when they do make these requests, we do go out and investigate them to find out what exactly is needed and what those costs are. So to answer your question, are we relying on them? The answer is no, but they may put us in a direction of something that needs to be repaired. And then on handicap accessibility, we have had handicap accessibility reports done in the past, and you can continue to have that. What I would say is that, especially in older buildings, the number of area of potential items is almost indefinite. That, you know, there are so many different items that can be found. You hit the big ones and the main ones, and those are what you try to address, but you may not find one that someone that's handicapped finds while they're trying to access the building. And then they point that out to the school. The school in turn points that out to us as a need. And it may end up being a capital need along those lines. So, and the only other thing I'd like to say is that the other thing that I'd like to at least bring into the conversation is recognize that when principals make these requests, we investigate them, we price them, we also categorize them. You know, and are categorized, you know, for the most part, safety, security, asset protection, classroom improvement, energy efficiency. So those are the, we categorize them into those different categories. And usually safety and security, as y'all know, the money primarily goes to asset protection, safety, security. So in my mind, I think it's important to get the school's voice on what they see their needs are. And there, if it's a safety and security concern, whether it came from an FCA or if it came from our staff, maintenance, or the principal at the school, you know, it needs to be considered, or we need to consider.
I would really say, just to, as my grandfather would say, you pay for what you get. In terms of, this is both right, in terms of the issue that you bring up in terms of maintenance, that's why I've been advocating for maintenance to come back in house, because when technically speaking, when you're contracting them, then they're to do, the question is safety and security a part of their contracting? Because we do subcontract maintenance out. So I mean, the question is that also a part of their job?
I thought we're talking 8% funds. We're talking 8%.
Right,
I see what Mr. Smith's saying.
But when she said 8% of funds, when you're talking about the FC, what's it called now? The
FCA.
The FCA the facility looking into that, is that actually a part of their job? And in terms of what are we paying them to do exactly that, safety and security? Or are we paying them to maintain the facilities? So you're asking someone to do two different things. You're asking them to do a functional one that you're not paying them for, but one for a function that you think is important. So, I brought up into my perspective, that's why I've been advocating for us to actually have them in-house and have them to be a part of the district, so that you can get all that bang for your buck. So, so that does tie into what we're saying.
Yeah. That's sort of, they kind of threw us off in conversation with you. That's the point I was gonna make. That's true. I mean, what are they getting paid to do? And are they looking just simply at facilities that exist, or facilities that should exist? You know, because if they're looking at that, then they can pick up the things you mentioned. For example, handicap ramps? Is that adequate? You know, and that's what, you know, any kind of facilities update and this year in time ought to be looking at. The school is 25, 30, 40 years old. The facilities might need a lot more upgrading than just vacs and other things done, you know.
Well, if I can, I'll give you a general rule of thumb for the difference between maintenance and capital. And I actually won't raise my numbers. I used to say that once a project gets above $5,000, you start to move towards a capital, going beyond maintenance. Now, probably should say $10,000, but that's just to say that maintenance, repairs, or adds, you know, up to a certain amount. And let's say it's a sidewalk repair. Well, for the most part, they're still paying for the concrete, or they're going to oversee a concrete contractor to do that work. What we pay for, the only thing we pay for is the labor of the maintenance workers. We do not pay for supplies. We do not pay for anything subcontract out. So even if they do the work in hand, the supplies are on us. And anytime that starts going above $5,000, except for maybe an HVAC compressor, which can go.
I'm not talking
beyond
about
that,
the
but-
word. I'm talking about the rule of the FCA.
Right.
What's their rule in terms of looking at a building? When they come in, are they looking at something as is, as it exists? Or are they looking at the way it should exist in this day and time after being in existence for 25 years?
So Kevin Kelly's still on there. Do you want to answer that question or do you want me to?
I'm still on here, but what was the question? I'm sorry.
But go ahead and ask that.
The question is, the FCA, are they looking at the way the building exists today and its present state, or the way it should exist today in today's time? You know, this building, for example, this facility is what, 50 years old? Are we looking to upkeep this as is, or is we looking to upgrade it along with upkeep?
Now, what we do in the FCA is we give you a current condition assessment of what that building is. Now, to follow up on what you were just saying, if the building was built 15 years ago, we utilize that number as the life cycle of that building. So if the building had a 20-year life cycle and it was built 15 years ago, we'd assess it at 5 years left. Does that answer your question?
My question is, other things that would be added to a building that's 15, 20 years, do you look at that in terms of your assessment? Do you look at what's now needed? Handicap ramps is just a simple example of what would be needed now. It wasn't needed when the building was built.
Right.
That's just one example. I don't know about lighting and LED lighting and all that kind of stuff. It's been a lot of upgrade over the last 20, 25 years to any facility in America. And do we look at what's possibilities of those upgrades, or do we look at the way things are and how do we just maintain the facility as is by doing, you know, some of the fixings that of the current building? That's what I want to know, because that's important to upgrade, I think, in terms of long-term upgrade. You can't just keep fixing the whole building and expect it to keep up with the modern needs. You're gonna have to.
Yeah, you're dead on. And I believe we refer to that as a facilities condition indexing, or FCI. And that's where you take the building's deferred maintenance, planned maintenance, and the facility's actual value, and utilizing that, you determine whether or not that facility is actually cost efficient to renovate it or expand it, or something in that category. But back to your original question about when we assess it, we assess what's there and what today would be its replacement.
Okay.
That's what, yeah, so you assess the air conditioning, and let's say the air conditioning needs to be replaced next year. They're gonna price our newest air conditioning unit, which has the
And that's a good example. If that air conditioning system is an R22 system, and we know that we can't go back to that, we're assessing what your new replacement would be, which is today's standard.
But if I can, just real quick, but what they aren't assessing, let's just say the classroom 700 square feet and we would have 1,000 square foot classroom, they don't assess that.
Yeah.
Because that's not, that's just.
When are we gonna get to that? That's another
Right.
question for another time. I
Yeah,
guess.
that's a different type of
Well,
assessment.
Yeah, and I do kind of want to get back because we were kind of closing in on something with the principal's request issue, because to me, I think if we look at how we approved the 8%, we did the categories based on the FCA, correct? And it was HVA, we need this much money for HVAC and this much money, that type of thing, based strictly off of the conditions assessment. So
The 8% this time prior to the FCA being completed. So the FCA is only going to be using the upcoming one. It will help us develop the project list.
okay, I thought I saw something. Well, what we officially, well, I don't even want to get back into all that, because what I'm saying going forward, I saw definitely a categorization thing. And I know the FCA has that. And it sounds to me like what you said is that safety and security is not necessarily, safety upgrades are not under the FCA. Is that right? Like if there's a broken door, for example, or I guess that would be under maintenance. But like using your example, because I remember the Beaufort High, the stairs, and they were rotted, some of the stairs, as I recall, and it was an escape route. So I would definitely say that would fall under, and it came under 8%. So I'm assuming it was over 5,000. If I recall, it was in the $10,000 to $13,000 range to repair all that.
Now, recognize that those stairs are not in existence. It was a path down a hill that had tree roots that were trip hazards. So they requested stairs to be built, and that's what's funded by the 8% project. So it wasn't a repair of something that was there existing. It was the creation of something new that had not been there before.
Okay. I don't have that strong a memory. I'd have to look at it, but it was because there was a concern that a student might be injured during an evacuation, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So that wouldn't really fall on, there's nothing that in the FCA that captures that. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. And the OE does specifically say that the superintendent will comply with all laws and that safety and security is number one, right? On all of our fundamental, I forget what the OE is off the top of my head, but I know safety and security is like the top priority. So those two things would fall outside of the FCA. However they get to us, right? What I am mostly concerned about is we have, and I can, it's this trade-off, haves, wants, needs, et cetera, but we have such an exhaustive list of things and schools that are quite old, 35 schools in a tidal area where there's a lot of wear and tear. At what point we're going to allow I'd like to have my guidance counselor office remodeled for $300,000. Because the problem is, from a political standpoint, it's hard when people are complaining that the bathrooms are all broken at their kids' school, but we're doing these other sort of like upgrades to different schools. And that's why I'm wondering, where I do think the board should have a little more discussion when it comes to 8% and how we'll represent next year. These are the projects that are they don't fall under safety and security, and they don't fall under complying with federal law, and they don't fall under the FCA. Here's the projects we'd like to do. And I think it's fair to put that on there, but I do think there's a role for the board to have those discussions, right? And that's what I'm wondering, as we shift to less of a line by line model, how we're going to represent these sorts of school-based requests. I'd like this furniture, I'd like this, canopy, whatever it is, when other schools maybe feel like they have other higher priority needs.
And Ms. Laura, I do agree with you. I do see exactly what you're saying in terms of what you're saying and you bringing this up. And especially with the principals, I kind of see both sides where sometimes administrators can see things that the FDC does not see. I do agree that. But I also strongly agree with. I do understand in terms of like when you said like we're building a guy's department when you're going to Beaufort High or you go to school where the bathroom smells like you in the middle of the septic tank, and when you first walk in the school, God forbid, the first bathroom you walk in smell like a septic tank, and we just add on the front of a school. So I do agree because I am posed that question a lot, and basically we do not kind of have no say so to some degree into how that works. So I do agree with you on that. That is very it is very legit. It's something I brought up and in the past. So I just strongly agree with that, and I think that also goes along with in terms of having control from the district down. I think that's a protocol mechanism. That's something I've been asking for a while now within this district.
Yeah, I mean, I am very comfortable with not making decisions as to HVAC units and plumbing. If there's money left over, I'm just wondering how we're going to handle that. And I don't know, I don't want to put Ms. Fidrich on the spot, or if you have any thoughts, or if you're just here for the listening.
No,
Mr. Campbell stands up as well.
I think it's, I know that this has been a question that has raised to the surface ever since we looked at the 8%, and we saw some requests on there that asked us to question why those were being pushed forward for 8% funds and other things were not. I know we also learned that, or to be expeditious about it, sometimes you plan things while the school is going to be shut down. So the school is going to be shut down for the summer for this, so therefore let's get these requests in. And we questioned that. I mean, so I understand the dilemma it is in, but I think the more times that we can use criteria based on expert assessments, the better we are off with dealing with everybody equitably. And we have the facilities condition assessment. We have, like you mentioned, Ms. Boatwright, federal guidelines for accessibility for people with mobility issues. We have guidelines those are the criteria, and the more we adhere to that criteria to get things accomplished makes it more equitable across the district. So
Yeah.
I guess what
yeah.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Campbell.
The other element that we're ignoring is the value of that fixed 8% amount. It just can't get the job done anymore. You know. Yeah, I mean, there's just less work you can get done for the $25 billion.
And that's just
that's a lot.
25.
Right. It's just not. Yeah, it's not as much
Right.
work.
Well, that sounds like a future topic.
Well, yeah, that would be my suggestion. If you're gonna approach 8% and getting that principals list accommodated to any degree, you need to make sure that Robert and others have a little bit more money to look at to fix things.
Yeah, no, I think that would be great. But for right now, what I'm wondering about, Robert, and maybe what I just basically would like to know or have a discussion about, and we are having a discussion about, is how next time we do the 8% project and we have the expert facility conditions assessment that we're going off of, and it's very well laid out as to what has to get done and then what really, really should get done. How we're going to represent not the principal requests for safety and security, but the principal requests of things they'd like to have. And so I guess if you wanted to have another category saying, possibility, something, basically, that's my only hesitation with moving to more of a category-based approval process through the board, is just making sure that the board has some insight into who's getting upgraded, when and how often and how much. So I don't know how we can do that going forward.
One thing I know from going to visiting schools, most principals will tell you or kind of say, when you're touring, or you can see if you go out and you visit, not even them telling you can kind of sometimes see what they are. And I'm sure that when staff go, when Robert and his staff go out there, Mr. Outing and his staff go out there, I'm sure they are told some of the same things. So I think it would just be more. I think it just be more important for, as they get those things that they're writing those things down, and more importantly, that the principals are reporting to Mr. Outing and his staff what they think are some of the important things, and those things be brought along with every other thing, and it's treated as though it's whatever in that bill that needs to be fixed, versus bringing to us and saying that this has precedent because this is what the principal want. I think it should go on the list, because I've been operations going to operate. I've been doing operations probably about 4 years here, and I've still even come to operations meetings. Even though I've not been on operations, and that's something that we talk about when in my first years here. David and John Dowling were kind of very. This was a discussion that we had at that time too, as well as of things that they were bringing in or things that they would push that they would feel the staff would feel that would have been pushed off from them from the administration that needs to be done. And so one of my suggestions is moving forward that's just stuff that when those things are being given, and that's put on the list as no action by as an emergency, but they can allow the FC, whatever that staff is, whatever that group is, to go through and evaluate like any other thing else that needs to be brought forward. I think that's probably the middle ground for that. I mean, so that you are assessing and understanding what they're bringing forward and seeing in relation to what needs to be done within 8% project. Where does that fall out on that list? I think that would be the median. I mean, that's just my take on it. From visiting the buildings and listening, they bring stuff to me as well as a board member. Hey, this is thing that we see, or this is something that's going on in the building that you need to see. Or I walk in the building, I see if there's a rainy day, I'm seeing leaking water falling through the floor. The floor is full of puddle water. So I get it to them. That's an emergency, but is it a district emergency? Is it something that needs to go into 8% money that needs to be done right now? So that I think is what the FCC or what staff, Mr. Ali, his staff needs to bring to us and let us know where do it falls on the list from 1 to 10 need to be done. Leave that there.
If I can, I mean, I'm hearing pretty that you want the FCA to drive the 8%, that anything on the principal request, I guess use the word downplayed or needs to be pointed out. And we did not have the SCA last year. My plan for the 8% is kind of how we did it this year. We're still going to develop the categories. We're still going to develop a project list that forms those categories, gives you those numbers. So there is going to be that same detailed project list to develop the categories. And that's where we'll bring and have the conversation over what of those smaller items really should be considered. And we can highlight those that are principal requests. And I think we need to change that name to something else.
Well, no, I mean, because we know that that's what the principal.
No, I'm not saying, I mean, it just, there's some needs to be some other, it has a negative connotation in just the name. I think that it'd be better if I gave it a different name, which I'll think about between now and next year. But we'll point those out. And obviously the FCA needs to have the priority that needs to drive the bulk of the money. But let's say that there's we need to point out the ones that are principal requests and why they have risen to the level of making the list.
Is that PA has done every how
We hadn't done it in 10 years.
10 years, so it was a $600,000.
Yeah, we're not gonna do that every
We're
year.
not gonna do it, but every 5 to maybe 10 years. And so I absolutely think, I mean, that was an assessment conducted by professionals that's what they do, right? I mean, that we have to use that criteria for the development of the 8%.
We didn't have that in its complete stage last year and haven't.
Right.
So, I mean, this year, it's going to drive the conversation for sure, but there may be some principal requests, or it's fine another term, but a school improvement item.
Building needs.
Yeah, that makes it to the top as well. And I do still need to try to, for my own use, category, take the principal requests and make sure they're considered. Now, we may decide they don't make it to the final cut or even the beginning cuts, but I need to track it and make sure I heard the schools that they think these things are important. And we as a staff on our level, we decide whether it makes it to y'all's level to be, you see the entire list, but whether it's one we're saying, we think these should be looked at for that 25 million, because it is a finite amount of money. We don't have enough money for everyone.
essentially.
Right, so I think that sounds good to me, because I think what I'm hearing is the big chunk of the money is going to go to what the FCA has already dictated out of necessity, right? I think one thing that's critical is having those categories, right? Safety, security, asset protection, et cetera. So that, and I, I don't think, I think it's a, I don't know how exactly to put it. It just seemed like a fool's errand to try and go through as an elected board member who's not an engineer or construction person, every single item. So I really want the FCA to drive it. On the other hand, I think that the school board does have a role in determining the leftover money, who gets the upgrades and the wants, right? So explaining why they're on the list, full transparency, and allowing the board to basically clear off all the stuff that we need to get done, because that's what the FCA or Safety and Security says we need to get done. If there is money left over, and I imagine there'll be some years there will not be money left over, unless we can get that $25 million cap up. And we want to do some other things that are more not as much a necessity, that's where we get to have a discussion about it. And like I said, for transparency, and then also from a political standpoint, to understand kind of how we're allocating money within the district, I think is important for me. So that's kind of what I'm hearing from you, although I may be hearing what I want to hear, but I think that would work for me for sure.
And also.
Mr. Campbell was speaking, was trying to.
Yeah, I was trying to say, I mean, essentially, it still will boil down to how effective that principal's request list is in the long term, because if you're not getting anything done from that list, then why have it? And if you're only going to get 2% of the items that they write down that they need done, then really you need to find another vehicle.
Well, and sometimes, you get on the list and then the principal changes, right? And that new principal's
That's the other
priorities are different.
Room too, but
Yeah.
bottom line is, I think your funding resource or your dollars to work with is essential in terms of all of that. I don't think you got a choice when the FCA is going to override everything on that list, because needs this, wants this, needs gonna trump wants all the time.
Well, and we're gonna get to the point, hopefully, that any new buildings won't be built out of 8% funds, which will, which set us back years as far as maintenance. Hopefully, and I can't recall, but technology, has that been moved out of 8%? We haven't done that, right? So you've got these technology.
For at 8%. Now you may do another pod or another.
Exactly what Mr. Campbell was saying.
Yeah.
Maybe there's this pot of, 8% technology over here, then 8% that's still 25 million for maintenance and asset preservation and so on. So, I mean, I think some of those things have absolutely even made it more difficult. Haven't changed the cap from 20 million for 10 to 11 years. Everything's coming out of there. So no wonder we have this vast need based on the facility assessment showed these vast needs for roofs and air conditioners and flooring and basics. So William and Ingrid, that's those things need to move forward.
That's the dialogue with Dr.
Right.
In terms of board's communication, what we're doing.
Yeah, and I totally agree, Ms. Vidrich. I think that's, putting a good period on it. I think we're still in the process of refining the 8% process and doing better with it than we've been doing. So, and I think we're really going to be greatly benefited by the FCA. And fundamentally, to Mr. Campbell's point, the fundamental problem is $25 million, 35 buildings. They're all old. We live in a coastal zone where there's a lot of, wear and tear. I mean, it's going to be a constant struggle. So.
Mr. Smith's hands up.
Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say also within that, I do want to do say that along the way, I do value what administrators say in their building, and I don't want to come across as that we don't value, because like he just said something like Mr. Allen just said, sometimes they do see things that are critical that someone may have not seen. So as from time to time when we visit the buildings, sometimes some principals do go over things that may be important, and I may actually think how's the building holding up. So I would continuously want to know as a representative in terms of building that I'm representing or buildings that I represent, that I would want to know with one of the administrators that are in the area, what do they see me as, what do they see as an importance in terms of that building too. So so obviously he was going to change that because to me it doesn't even change, it doesn't have a negative connotation. I think sometimes the way it's handled is more, to me, in my personal opinion, and I'll say that I think that's more of the negative way, because sometimes they may go and have conversations with principals, and principals may take it as in, I was told that this was going to happen. So now it becomes a tug of war, and it just needs to be said, okay, this is what's on the list, and from the principal's point of view, and that's where it stands. And so therefore that doesn't create a tug of war. But I do want to say that I do honor what principals say, what they see in their building that needs to be done. But I said it should go on the list with everything else, along with the other 200,000 things that need to be done, and it should be weighed as a need versus wants. So I mean that's just my point of view. And I hope that name don't change, because I do want to know what principal at Lady Island Middle School have going on, what the principal at Lady Island Elementary School, principal at Beaufort High School at Battery Creek. I want to know what their wants are as well, because that's what they have to, that's what they work at.
If I can just add one thing, I mean, you bring up a really good point, because one of our struggles is that principals, a lot of times, once they give us this list, they just think it's going to be done. And we have to constantly communicate to them, no, this means it's a consideration. We'll decide in the May, we'll review with the boards. There's a process as part of this. So that's something we have to work a little better on, make sure they get that understanding that just because they ask for it doesn't mean they get it. Because there is that assumption out there, especially new principals. That's for us to take on.
All right, well, I think that I appreciate the discussion and the input from everybody. It's something that just I wanted to get clarification on as we go forward on this 8%, but I feel like we're heading in the right direction. So that will conclude the agenda items. We have coming out of this committee today, we have 2 more meetings, operations committee. We have the communication OEs next week. Robin, I don't have for some reason, my calendar's not pulling up, but what time did we decide on? That's on Monday, right?
Yes, and let me go look at what we said. I think, hold on. Monday, December 5th, it's a Zoom meeting.
Yeah, well, I'm going to be zooming.
2 o'clock.
Right. Okay. And that should be, that's just going over the communication OEs. And then the 14th, we have another HR kind of focused OEs that are meeting. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So we can put up future topics at this point, but I feel like we've got enough going through into January, and then, there'll be a new committee. So if there's any future topics, speak now or wait till next year.
Can I request a construction update for the December 14th meeting, just because?
Yeah. Yeah, those and is that in advance of the clock meeting, correct?
Yes,
that would go on there automatically, because you presented everything that's out of these next 2 meetings will go for the December 13th meeting.
Believe that is that the second Wednesday?
The clock meeting.
It's actually, I guess, the 3rd, because Wednesday's no, it's the 2nd, right? Wednesday, the 1st is the Thursday.
Right. So these 2 meetings would go on the December 13th meeting.
Yeah, so the clock meeting will be that same day, and we talked about doing the clock meeting at Hilton Head Middle School, but you're doing HR focus. So
Here.
I think you're going to do your meeting here.
Yes.
Well, we don't have to. I mean, Mel and I are on Hilton Head.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
I can zoom in. Well, all we have is a construction update. Anyway, we can zoom in for the construction.
Fair enough. So
I do have future topics.
Okay.
Today, I think that one thing that we came across is we need to understand exactly what maintenance is being accountable for. So I think that, and when written, what does that look like? How does that work? And you know, what they're doing, almost slash a part of a task analysis. Understand what are we actually paying for? In terms of services, I didn't make this as well as custodians. I think that's a future topic so that we can understand versus in-house versus out-house as well.
Okay, we'll put that on the list.
Now, okay. Understanding what they are currently doing is a big difference between in-house, out-of-house.
Well, actually, the first part is let's understanding what they're doing and what we're requiring them to do, and what does that look like?
Okay,
Yeah.
let's start with that, because we can present on that. For the most part, in my mind, you're looking at a deep dive into their contract. What is their contract? Have them responsible for both groups.
Maintenance and custodials.
Yep.
Yes.
And I think that'll have to go on the January meeting.
No problem. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay, got that duly noted. All right, so out of this, we have the motion for acceptance of OE 15 and the quarterly FOIA report OE 16. Other than that, I think that pretty much sums up our meeting, right? Any other comments?
Move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. So moved. Bye, everybody.
I need to give you a call in a few minutes.